Mercedes-Benz is one of the oldest car manufacturers in the world, with its foundations dating back to 1886, when Carl Benz patented the first commercially available automobile. His company merged with Daimler in 1926 to become Daimler-Benz, the parent company of Mercedes-Benz.
The Mercedes name itself came from the Daimler side of the merger and was named after the daughter of Emil Jelinek, who was an investor and director of the company. He commissioned Daimler to build what was effectively the first modern automobile in 1901. Mercedes built its reputation on producing high-quality, luxurious automobiles for wealthy owners, and long prided themselves on building over-engineered cars which were completely reliable and technologically advanced.
The SL series of Mercedes came into being in 1952 with the 300 SL. The famously gull-wing car was designed to be a race car, and a street version didn't appear until 1954. Alongside the very expensive 300 SL, Mercedes also released a more affordable but less sporting 190 SL. Both cars ended up getting replaced with a single redesign in 1963, which, after several engine upgrades and minor changes, culminated in the 280 SL we're looking at today.
The iconic design, with its sleek but still very German lines, was capped with a removable hardtop with a distinctive inverted curve. That roofline gave the car its nickname, Mercedes Pagoda.
These cars absolutely cemented Mercedes' reputation for building luxury touring cars that could be used as an everyday driver.
Welcome to yet another episode of Everyday to Exotic.
Join us as we share some of the unique vehicles in our diverse collection of exotic and everyday cars.
Driving each car provides a different experience, each with their individual strengths and weaknesses.
We'll take you through those characteristics together, both up close in the studio and while driving them on the beautiful roads of Oregon.
Finally, we'll individually award points for each episode's car to determine where it ranks in the Haugland Collection.
We're glad you're here for this episode of Everyday to Exotic.
So good, you didn't hit each other. You're good.
There was no smacking this time.
So this is our 1970 Mercedes-Benz 280 SL. It is the last of the W113 series of cars, which are all the ones that share the same kind of body style. They ceased production in 1972 and replaced it with the R107 series, which is kind of similar in lines but has a lot of differences. To make things confusing, there's also a 2.8 liter version of that car, so there's actually two different 280 SLs with very different bodies. This is the last of the true Pagoda cars. So when we bought this car, we bought it locally from the sports car shop, which is responsible for a large number of the cars in our collection.
There are car pushers.
It's been a local car for quite a while. They've done a lot of maintenance and repairs on it, so we knew a lot of the history of the car over its life. It has been repainted, but never really taken apart and restored. The hardtop, I think, originally was red, which would have been color matched to the rest of the car. That's usually what you tend to see. I think it looks great in black. But otherwise, this car really hasn't had major restoration. The interior is pretty much all original. The engine bay is largely original other than maintenance and repairs that have been done. So overall, it's a nice, clean, accident-free, rust-free example. Fantastic driver.
This car relies a lot more on long lines and subtle curves than the more curvaceous Italian styling. For instance, you can see this beautiful pressed-in indent. It doesn't have a aerodynamic purpose. It's strictly aesthetics, strictly cosmetic, but it breaks up what would otherwise be a really slab-sided car and makes the car look even longer. This really isn't that long a car. Another thing that it does is it sets off the red. This color of red does not tend to look as nice on really curvy cars. Realize that may be a little controversial? Red tends to flatten curves. With the very subtle curves and then the pressed in lines, it adds a dimensionality to that red color. It makes the car look even better. The chrome is fairly subtle. The only really ostentatious chrome is up front here with the big Mercedes emblem. Everybody should know you're driving a Mercedes. The headlights on this car are unusual for the time period. They're big and oval. These are European style headlights. American law required for you to have 7-inch sealed beam round headlights. These headlights were dim. These headlights are much safer because you can actually see where you're going.
These are definitely far superior.
So bumpers, you have overriders. These were also required in 1970.
And at the same time on the grille, you have a lot of elegance here because the chrome basically defines the key features of it. The emblem, the mouth around, the bars that run across, but then the area behind it is all a nice matte black, so it basically fades off into the depths of the car. As we move more towards the back of the car, you see this bulge in the center of the hood. It's a little bit subtle as well, but basically gives extra clearance to the engine. It lines up almost perfectly with the air inlet vent here behind that sticks up. Windscreen is pretty normal, but then you start getting to the defining feature of the car, which is the hardtop. In a lot of ways, this is one of the few cars that I think looks better with a hardtop on rather than a convertible top or with a convertible top even down. It has this dished curve in the center that you can just barely see, but it's enough to really give it a distinctive line. It was a patented design by Mercedes and sort of became iconic for these cars and the ones that sort of followed it.
One of the coolest features on this car is also one of the more difficult ones to restore, and that's the color-matched hubcaps. If you want to repaint those, you have to mask off that rather slender Mercedes emblem in order to get it right.
It's very, very difficult to do, especially on a chromed hubcap. So Mercedes-Benz had a really big focus on safety with designing this car. This is actually, by my understanding, the very first car to actually have designed-in crumple zones. It's designs that, in the case of a collision, certain sections collapse, while at the same time, the main passenger compartment is really hardened. It's the same at the back, and so from here, a rear impact will keep things from transferring forward into that same area, making this overall a very safe, very well-engineered car that is a lot of hidden work that you don't tend to actually understand and see without actually knowing the science behind it.
In my opinion, this car has a very pretty backside. One of the features is these vestigial tail fins. They're barely there, they're little bumps. This car was designed in the early 1960s when tail fins were going out of fashion but weren't completely gone yet. I love how that shape echoes the pagoda top, and it provides a nice sort of almost stacking aesthetic.
Getting to the taillights, you get kind of the same type of thing where you have a little bit of an echo between the split bumper and the taillight itself, and it sort of divides the car with just a single thin line at the trunk latch that basically ties the two sides together. So you've got a nice chrome filler for the gas cap here. This one actually locks, and then your chrome tailpipe tips sort of clean up the rest of the end. One of the other things you really see from the back, looking at the greenhouse of this, how big that rear window is. You basically have a large rear window, you've got very narrow pillars on the front windows. The only real wide pillar is these back corners here, which without it, the hardtop would have no strength whatsoever. So very, very good visibility, even with the hardtop on.
So opening the trunk is pretty easy. Just push the little button and lift.
The trunk lid is really light because its skin is aluminum, along with the doors and the hood.
The aesthetics again on this are really cool. The button stays down here as opposed to being integrated with the trunk. It's unusual. The trunk is wide, and it's spacious that way, but it's not very deep, and a lot of it is taken up by the luxuriously wrapped spare tire. The nice thing about that is that your spare tire doesn't get everything in your trunk dirty.
One of the advantages is it also gives you a nice place for the factory toolkit that originally came with these cars, which this one's not entirely complete, but it has most of the original tools and is the original tool roll. So we've got tools for spark plugs, we've got all our wrenches, screwdrivers, things along that line, little Tommy bar. So this is from an era when they still kind of expect you to be able to do some maintenance on the car yourself. No longer the kind of thing you tend to find in cars.
Nowadays, they actively discourage you from working on your own car.
And it just snaps up and sits here in the little spare tire well on the cover,
which is specifically made for that purpose. I would guess three boxes of wine, except they would have to be on their sides because you're going to crush the tops of the bottles if you close the trunk.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's another car with a fairly shallow trunk, so you might be able to cram one in the very back without any issues, but otherwise, it's probably about 3 on their sides.
Less of a winery car, more of a weekend car.
So while Amy sits in the driver's seat knitting, I'll go and show you the mechanicals. Do you want to pull the lever? Thank you. So this is a very complex straight 6-cylinder engine in a lot of ways. This is an early fuel-injected car. From 1963 on, these things had fuel injection, well before it was really needed in order to meet emissions. It's actually a multi-port injection system. It runs off of a mechanical pump along here, very similar to what we had in our Alfa Romeo Montreal, but this actually predates that design by a good 6-7 years. They really did a good job of making this a fairly pretty engine bay. You can ignore the 2 lights and things that we have in here. That's mainly so that you can actually see how gorgeous this engine is. This is not a restored engine bay at all. You've got nice chrome pipes and everything. You've got a beautiful aluminum valve cover. There's a lot of aluminum in here. It's just a very clean, very mechanical, kind of steampunk looking engine bay in a lot of ways. So we have our injection pump down here that's driven by the engine itself, and all these chrome lines that run off of it then go into individual ports on the engine itself, one for each cylinder. Your distributor's here off the front of the engine, running the spark plugs on that side. Your intake's on this side. Your exhaust is also on this side. So it isn't a cross flow. One of the other things you'll notice in here is the throttle linkage, which comes all the way from the left side of the engine up over the top, all the way across here, has a little valve here, and then pushes and opens the throttle body right here at the intake. So again, being a fuel-injected car, there's only a single throttle body, but it's actually a rather complex linkage with lots of little connecting ends and everything to make it work. Other things that you'll notice in here is you've got boosted brakes with the large booster here. It's dual circuit, so you've got more safety features here with the front and rear brakes being separated. Front brakes are discs. As we get to the rear, we get to drums. So pretty basic, pretty straightforward. Steering on this car is pretty good and is power assisted, so it's actually very easy for someone even Amy's size to drive without too much issue. She doesn't have to struggle with it. Front suspension is wishbones. Pretty basic. The rear suspension is actually kind of an unusual swing axle, but with a hinge at the center differential that allows each arm to basically swing independently of each other. Transmission on this is a 4-speed manual. They had a 5-speed manual as an option early in these cars, but for some reason Mercedes decided that no one really needed that. Most of these in the US, however, were 3-speed automatics, and they had to suffer with that. So frankly, any 4-speed or any manual transmission automatically makes this a little bit better car to drive from my point of view. We don't have air conditioning on here. It was an option, and it had a long unit that mounted actually underneath the entire width of the dash that actually would blow the cold air in, but you would have had all your compressor and everything here in the engine bay as well.
So, welcome to the interior. The interior in this vehicle is mostly original. The headliner is really cool. It was very stylish at the time to do a perforated headliner. So, in order for you to see the rest of the interior more clearly, we're going to take the hardtop off. In order to do that, you need to flip the visors down. There are levers here, and then there's 2 more in the back. And you just flip those, and then you get 2 lovely strapping gentlemen who have about equal height who will lift it off and transport it out of the way so that we can get to the rest of the interior.
It's just a couple of small steps, and I'll get through it.
And then they very kindly take it away so that we can look at the rest of the interior.
Throw a coin in the well for a cheap thrill.
So the interior is vinyl. The cool thing about the vinyl in here is that it is special MB Tex vinyl. It was specific to Mercedes. And even though this car is from 1970, it's in really remarkable shape. Mercedes was very about cush, luxury, and safety. There's not a single hard edge in this interior. Even the wood is beveled so that you're not gonna, smack yourself if you get into a collision. I love the metal dashboard. I love metal dashboards and the details like the texturing on the chrome there, things like that. The gauges are nice and big. You have your miles per hour, you have your tachometer, you have the gas gauge is kind of cool because it's just a sort of a column in the middle. There are indicator lights in the dashboard to tell you when various things are happening. Unfortunately, none of them are labeled. They indicate, but what? So something's happening, I don't know what it is. The radio is original. It's a Becker Europa stereo, which was very technologically advanced for 1970, AM and FM. The vents are actually kind of cool in this car. That's not something I'm usually like, ooh. But in this case, there are 2 kinds. Here's the fresh air vent, and you have a lever that lets in air from outside. And then you have these weird little flippy things here. That's your heater vent. And those are fun to play with. Locking glove box. It's not locked right now. I love how solid this is. Chunk. It also has a map light. I don't know if you can see that. I've got my hand kind of waving underneath. That automatically turns on when you open up the glove box. Such a good noise. The seatbelts in this car are really interesting. They're unusual. So you have your 3-point seatbelt. All the adjustment is on the buckle end. And what you do is you take the hooky bit, and you clip it in like that. And then tension is what holds that tight. It's really nice for people like me who are short because it comes over the shoulder like this as opposed to being attached up here. So it doesn't cut into my neck when I'm driving. It's little things like that that can make a drive comfortable or uncomfortable. You can see the cover for the soft top back here. And it's just tucked in under there. There's a latch back here that you press to get it to come up. It's kind of a complicated process. We're not going to do that here. There's a little bit of cargo space in the back. This is a 2-seater, but it is very roomy. You have, speakers, but you can put several small things back there, like for instance, your knitting bag. One kind of odd feature in this vehicle is the wood accents. They're up here. There's this just sort of bar and this vent. And then down here, the center console has wood and it's like vinyl lined. It's very luxurious looking, but it doesn't feel like it fits. Maybe wood indicated luxury. There were other luxury cars that had wood accents in various places in the vehicle, including on the dashboard, but it feels a little tacked on in this car.
Rainbow sweater, put on a rainbow sweater.
are in our 1970 Mercedes SL. 280 SL.
That gives you an idea of how much Amy pays attention to the numbers.
Well,
of cars.
the numbers
car.
just...
It's a really cool red Mercedes.
Yeah, the numbers do not stay in my head, and this is an issue that I tend to have with both Mercedes and BMW. It doesn't have a name.
So this is a W113 280 SL to make it even more confusing.
Yes, I just do not do well. Give me a name, and unlike a Lotus, don't make them all start with the same letter. That would be great. Anyway, this car is just nice to drive. You can drive it for very long distances. It's only a 4-speed, so you basically get into 4th gear and go. And it's totally happy doing that. It's a very friendly car, even for people who aren't experienced with stick shift.
And of the classic cars in the collection, I think this is one of the ones that you've had the easiest time just getting into and driving.
Yes,
so far.
Absolutely. I mean, I started driving this car today, and I will say that is something that I love about us doing Everyday to Exotic, is that it encourages me to drive cars in our collection that I wouldn't just go into the garage and pull out. You know, it's exposing me to cars that I'm like, what I love the most about this car is how smooth the ride is. It's so comfortable. You could just keep going. The suspension is soft. It's not a sports car, okay? This is a GT car.
Suspension, I think, is way too soft for a sports car, to be honest.
You wouldn't...
It's really cushy.
Yeah. You wouldn't race this. You wouldn't do anything, too extreme with it. But it is a lovely car to put your suitcases in the trunk and go on a nice holiday for a weekend. Something else I love about this car is I don't feel at all worried about taking turns. I mean, I don't want to, take turns at extremely high speed or anything crazy, but this car will just do whatever you ask. It's very happy, very stable, very safe. It's also a very quiet car. I can hear air whistling a little bit, but it's generally a very quiet car. So if you're looking for a classic car that you could still probably drive anywhere, this is a good one.
If you've ever known a person who was not afraid to steal, then you've known her.
So of the Mercedes cars in our collection, this one's actually probably my favorite. All of our Mercedes are actually SLs. So we've got a 190 SL, this 280, and a 560 SL. And this is probably the one I enjoy driving the most out of all three of them. It's a very comfortable car. They all kind of share that same cushy, good for driving around, but not really sporty sports cars. Yeah, these cars have a very classic style. I mean, others copied it. Triumph did in England. Other car companies kind of tried to mimic the style of this thing for many, many years. This was sort of the definitive sign of automotive excellence for a convertible coupe, really, where you could put a hard top on, you could take it off, and all of that. Almost everyone else was really trying to mimic the success of this thing, and this was a really successful car for Mercedes. If I were to say there's one thing I don't like about it is I really, really, really wish it had a 5th gear. When I'm going about 55 miles an hour, you hit a point where it's like, I'm turning 3,000 RPM. I would really like to be in 5th gear at that point.
You hear that noise that you instinctively go, it's
Shift.
Time to shift, and
Shift
there's
again.
nowhere to go.
There's also, as best I can tell, not really a good kit to install a 5-speed in this, unless you can turn up one of the incredibly rare originals. So I will probably end up living with it. But the steering in this is really nice and light, very precise, rack and pinion. Just does really what you want it to. The brakes are great. It's got a reasonable amount of power for just driving around. I mean, Mercedes did rally race these with some success, but it would be a lousy track car. Far too heavy, far too compliant suspension. It's one of those things where it really is a road car, so it excels, if anything, as a race-prepped road car.
He'll take a very nice lady and talk her down small till she fits in the palm of his hand. Keeps his love on a shelf, only thinks about himself, and that's a cold-hearted man.
Okay, we're back in the studio after a long drive on a cold winter day. So, time for the Haugland Score. Here's how it works.
Alex and I have individually rated the car in 5 categories, each with a rank of 0 to 10. Then we add our scores together to give us the final Haugland score.
After we combine our scores, the results go up on the board. So our first category here is performance. For me, I ended up giving it a 6. It's not the fastest car. It's a nice driving car, but it's not amazing.
And I gave it an 8, partially because I love the precise steering, I love how smoothly it goes down the road. I get acceleration when I want it, but you're right, it doesn't give you like a ton of acceleration or anything like that. So for style, I gave it an 8. I really love the nice clean lines. There's just enough chrome. It's fairly understated, other than the color. Red is not understated. It's a very nice car.
I gave it a 7. I mean, it has some very distinctive lines and style to it. It is a little bit understated. It's a little bit conservative in its lines, but it is still a beautiful car. So drivability for me is really, again, about it being a daily driver. This is a very drivable, usable car. I ended up giving it a 7 though, and the main reason I gave it a 7 is it needs one more gear. On the highway, it's just a little bit too many revs.
I gave it a 9. I loved driving it. I was like, I could sit in this car forever. I would park this anywhere. The trunk is spacious, but I do agree with you. As an in-town car,
it would be great.
It's fantastic. But if you want to take this on a road trip, I might drop it a couple points.
Certainly not the interstate.
No. So for significance, I gave it an 8. It's the first car with crumple zones. It's a distinctive car both in Mercedes history and in our collection.
I also gave it an 8 for similar reasons. It is also one of the Mercedes cars that I've always loved. It's actually one that my mother has always wanted to have. In that case, it's a pretty significant one for the collection, that we actually have one. So I suspect my delight score is going to be a bit lower than yours. I ended up giving it a 6. I enjoy the car. I think a lot of people probably enjoy seeing the car, but it's not one that leaps out as the, ooh, I saw Mercedes today for a lot of people. Maybe if they're excited about Mercedes, but it's not something where people jump up and down about it.
So the reason why I laughed is I gave it a 6. Because I love it. I love driving it, but it is kind of, you don't get that, oh my God, you know, when you're driving it around. It's kind of a, if you know kind of car.
Absolutely.
After some quick math, we have a final score of 73 for our 1970 Mercedes 280 SL.
Wow, that actually, as of this episode, puts that in 3rd place. So it's just behind the Datsun 240Z and just ahead of the Porsche 356 Super 90 Roadster.
That's really interesting because that puts it right between 2 very sporty cars. And I feel like this is very different from either of them.
Well, I think a big part of that is because this is a car you can use every day, like the Datsun 240Z. That's its big advantage over the Porsche 356 and some of the other cars we've done up to this point. That makes this a car that you can drive anytime, anywhere. Thank you for watching this episode of Everyday to Exotic.
Our goal is to create a show that's as much fun for you to watch as it is for us to make.
So please comment. Let us know what you liked and what you'd like to see.
Don't forget to subscribe. We're creating new content all the time, and we're looking forward to bringing it to you. You'll want to be among the first to know.
And if you have friends who you think would enjoy this, please go ahead and share it with them.
Don't forget to like.
And if you want to see what else is going on with the Haugland Collection, follow us on Instagram at Haugland Collection. We'll see you on the next episode of Everyday to Exotic.
Okay, see you later. Bye.